Welcome to Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast. 1, 2. Welcome to Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast. I'm Jeffrey A. McGuire. You can call me Jam. And this is where we celebrate the TYPO3 community, sharing your stories, talking about your projects and the difference you make in, around, and with TYPO3 CMS. In today's episode of Application, the TYPO3 Community Podcast, we visit a conversation I recorded under some difficult technical conditions in pandemic-plagued 2020 with Daniel Siepmann, TYPO3 developer and integrator and co-founder of the Codappix web agency. People in the community have told me Daniel is an omnipresent force in community channels, always ready to answer questions and help people. And when he founded his company, he even made it his job to help other agencies get more out of TYPO3, a sort of perfect open source storm. Daniel also contributes time and energy to the community docs team, education committee, core development, answering issues, making patches. He seems like a pretty busy guy. In our conversation, we talk about the intersection of self-care, professionalism, contribution, and healthy client relationships. He also has tips for becoming a better developer, and we dig into why TYPO3 being quote-unquote feature complete doesn't mean we're done or that there aren't more features coming for it. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed talking with Daniel. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
I'm Daniel Siepmann from Germany, and I'm doing TYPO3, mostly backend development, partly integrating stuff. Since, I guess, 2012, non-stop. I've looked into some other parts like TYPO3 Flow back in the days when it was still part of TYPO3, but I'm always sticking to TYPO3 in the end. Mm-hmm. And yeah, regarding that's my job. And besides that, I'm also trying to participate in the community, like the docs team, education committee, by filling out issues or providing patches for issues, and of course, joining the camps and dev days and stuff like that when they are happening.
And so you've been using TYPO3 since 2012?
Yeah. That was when I was a trainee in a web agency, and they were already using TYPO3. And in the first year, I didn't use TYPO3 itself, just plain PHP, and they integrated my solutions. But in the second year, I thought, okay, we are using a system here, so that might provide some benefits for us. So better take a look what it's capable of and how to actually use the system. And that's where the journey started for me.
Oh, nice. So that's also part of the value proposition of using a CMS, for example, or a pre-baked framework or platform, because you don't have to build 90% of it again. You can go do the interesting thing, right?
Yes, right. That wasn't true for me for the first year, because I needed to build everything in plain PHP and someone integrated it. So I couldn't reuse anything. The first thing I learned was the TCA, which is providing the input fields in the back end. And that already was mind-blowing. You just put some configuration in the system and you get full featured forms with validation, permission stuff, all those kind of things, and that was a huge time saver. Yeah,
the table configuration array.
Yes.
And then you were hooked.
Yeah, then I was hooked, and especially for me as still being a trainee, everyone said, okay, you have an issue, go to Daniel, he's the expert. And that felt very strange, because you were in the second year and didn't know anything except some parts of the TCA. But as you were the first one who had a deeper look into the system, you already were the expert. So, and that, of course, gave extra power to go always an extra step and have further looks.
So 2012, what version of TYPO3 was that?
Something with 4 in the front, and the first thing I'm really remembering I was working on was 4.7, which wasn't back in 2012, but when we did the first relaunch for a big customer, when I've joined the team and already was familiar with most of the parts.
Are you still working at the same agency today?
No, and this agency also doesn't exist anymore. They were bought by their customer.
Interesting.
But no, I've left before because of different opinions where to go. And after I've left, I learned that everything was okay for the agency, which I didn't think back when I was there. But afterwards, I learned, okay, everyone is happy there, just not me. So I need to leave the relationship and find a way to be happy.
And have you found that way?
Yeah, we founded our own company, I guess 2 years back. And yeah, now I'm working with customers I like, on projects I like, and have only a 4 days week. So yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
You're living the dream. Give us your shameless pitch. What is your company and what do you do?
Yeah, we are Codappix GmbH, also founded in Mönchengladbach, the city where I live. And I'm doing something different than my colleagues. I'm more or less only helping TYPO3 agencies and other companies that are using TYPO3 to get most out of the system, providing backend development skills, reviews, automated testing, or partnership with those TYPO3 companies to support them and to bring them to the next level. So.
Okay, so Codappix, part of your main business is doing applications for clients, and then you provide TYPO3 support and enhancement services from that base. That's nice. That sounds like a fun job too. It sounds really open sourcey because I think you're helping everyone else do better with the platform, right?
That was one of the big ideas, at least for myself. By making them better, we can deliver better software and everyone should benefit in the end.
So it's kind of also a nice coincidence because I was talking with André Steiner recently for the podcast. He said about you, he said, whenever he has a question, you're there and you're super, super motivated to help. He wanted me to ask you, how do you know so much? He said, you know everything about TYPO3 and the stack and everything. Where does that motivation to be so helpful come from?
I hope I'm a person that doesn't think you need to have big money or nice cars, but that it's more important to have nice people around you and to do something meaningful. And I guess the easiest part for me to support everyone else is just providing my knowledge, because some people are willing to hear and to listen and are gratefully and thankfully if you provide them help. Others just don't care, but that's okay. You have to deal with it. When you provide someone help and it helps him actually, sometimes your help doesn't help anyone else, but if it helps, they are just thankfully and say, thank you so much, you have saved me a lot of time. And most of the time, if you are on a camp, you also have their face up front and you just see them smiling and stuff like that. So that's, I guess, what's the motivation or where the motivation comes from.
Nice. And on a good day, maybe they'll buy you a beer as well.
Yeah.
I think the reason we have societies and the reason we do things together is because we, I think, naturally like to help each other. And I think that open source gives us a really interesting opportunity to sort of combine that with changing the world and acting in our own interest at the same time. I guess, I think it's called enlightened self-interest, where you also said, so I like helping someone and I'm just going to help them because if they say thank you, that's cool and that's good enough. But you also mentioned before, if they use the system better, all of us deliver better projects and can work a little bit better. And then I guess that comes around, helps the whole thing in the end.
I guess there are many reasons, and that just were the most important parts. And what you have said, I also believe that humans are just social. If you go to a football stadium, it doesn't matter if you are a CEO or someone else. Everyone has the same dreams that your team wins and supports the team. So I guess that's just the same. And it's strange if other people think, okay, making war is a good idea. That's just, why can you believe in something like that?
Yeah.
It's way better to just think, okay, let's do something great together. That's way better.
Are you a football fan?
Yes.
Mönchengladbach?
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. How's that going for you in 2020?
It's strange because we live 2 kilometers from the stadium and we joined every game at home back in the last year. So that's strange not to be live when your team plays. Regarding the success of our team, yeah, we just won 6-0 in the Champions League. So yeah, that's going great. Nice. You do a lot in TYPO3. You said you work on the documentation and in the education team, and you submit core patches. Are you on the core
development team?
Yes, since last year, but there are different kinds of levels. There are some people like Benji who are doing a lot of core patches, and people like me who do 1 or 2 in a month. If you are more or less everywhere, of course I'm not everywhere, but if you are in so many places, you can't spend the same amount of time and patience to every single part. So
right.
You have more bigger picture and doing less everywhere, but are better connected and maybe can guide others like on camps and say them, okay, if you need that, talk to this guy or
right.
this girl and stuff like that, and can help in other ways. So
it's not ideal from some viewpoints, but frankly, if you are involved with so many teams and so many different parts and systems, then you kind of have a map to who gets what done, right? And in an ideal world, a lot of people wish that open source projects didn't function like tribes so much, but actually it's just another kind of human society, right?
Yeah.
I guess there's like a TYPO3 hotspot in Mönchengladbach as well, right? Isn't Boris Hinzer there?
Yes. He is not actually living in Mönchengladbach, but his agency is there. Yeah.
And Louisa Fassbender is right around the corner somewhere.
I don't know where she lives, but I guess she's working for Marketing Factory in Düsseldorf, which is just half an hour from Mönchengladbach. So actually, Mönchengladbach is more or less on the left side of a hotspot in Germany, actually, because we have the Metropole Rhein-Ruhr and Cologne, so all the big cities are around us. If you compare that to Munich, there's nothing around Munich, but if you're talking to someone about Düsseldorf, then there's also Essen and Cologne and Mönchengladbach. So that's
and Aachen and Siegen and and there really are an extraordinary number of agencies in Düsseldorf and a great deal of TYPO3 in this region, actually. As well as the TYPO3 company, right? The TYPO3 GmbH. Yeah. What is the coolest thing that you ever built with TYPO3?
Okay, that depends on how you define cool. Is it the complex? If it's more complex, is it more cool to solve the issue, or is it complex because it has a nice use case for the customer, or because it's something fancy new to you? So it's very hard to define that one cool thing, because if I won't do cool things over a long time, I would just quit the job and do something else. So I always try to do one cool thing in a month or like something like that. For me, it's actually quite cool right now to do backend development for one customer and do my first backend module again. It's also cool that I did a first addition to the TCA for this customer. It's actually one website where they actually do editorial stuff. That's most of the time not true for the customers I know. And they get their articles as Word documents and need to copy and paste them in. And we need to extract footnotes and reference to the footnotes and stuff like that. So do extra parsing. And I didn't finish the parsing right now, but for me it was actually cool again to work with the new form engine, the TCA, and just add a new button besides the body text, which opens custom backend part where you can paste the Word document, and we would do the parsing and stuff like that. So nothing cool for other maybe, but it's cool for me actually because I'm digging into new stuff again, and that's always cool to learn what can the system do for you.
You're helping the poor people who have to work in Microsoft Word every day.
Yeah. I don't know why they are using that, but I guess there are still some companies where Microsoft is still the thing to go. So
what's going on? What format is that stuff then? Are you dealing with XML in the background?
I don't know yet because I don't have the examples right now. I just integrated the backend part and now waiting for the examples. So I guess next week I will figure it out, hopefully.
Cool, okay. Are you going to open source that as an extension?
Well, I'm not the big fan of providing extensions for every single stuff. I'm totally open for providing the code and providing blog posts. Okay, we did that and just contact us, or here's a code example. But if you provide an extension, at least in my opinion, you need to think about it like a product.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you from open strategy partners doing marketing know what that means. So you need to think, okay, what should be part of the product? What's the vision for the product? What should it do in the future and stuff like that? Who is going to use this product and all those kind of things. So you would need to do some extra work if you don't think, okay, I will just open source it and that's it.
Right. That's actually irresponsible, right?
Yes, exactly.
Some people think that you just set the code free and magic happens and it's all okay, but it's a huge responsibility. You need to make sure it's secure. You need to be responsive to people's requests, whether or not you want to integrate them, and you have to provide updates and you have to track the versions as they go. I think that's a really interesting, responsible approach that you're taking, because you are happy to show people how you did it and give them your code and talk with them about it. And that's enough for them to go and build it. But I think you're also taking care of yourself. And this is a big topic in 2020, and not taking on the burden of maintaining 5 or 10 or 50 extensions. And then that'd get in the way of you doing your cool new project every month, right?
Yes, exactly. I always try to be responsible for the things I want to be responsible for. Nothing more and nothing less. So every time someone approaches me and asks, can you do that? I always try to find the border, what I'm responsible for and whether I want to do it or not. So I guess that's, if you want to be a professional, that's part of your job, because otherwise you're not professional. If you say, yeah, I will do it, and then the customer approaches you and say, yeah, well, there's a new TYPO3 version. How do we proceed? And you say, I don't care. You just paid me and I'm done. So that's it. So that's not professional from my point of view. Yeah.
On the other hand, it's very good, whether you're maintaining a system or whether you're maintaining a client relationship, if you set the scope and the expectations and you learn to say no, which I find really hard, because at some point maybe you take on too much and then you don't live up to the things that you think you should, right?
Yeah.
I was fascinated by the idea that as an intern or a junior developer or whatever, at some point you got to know some of the TCA and then all of a sudden you were the expert, and then people started coming to you. And you said that started you on a path of just diving deeper and deeper. If I'm looking to become an expert or I want to be better at my development job, what should I do?
I guess the most important thing, as always, when you want to become better at something, you need some passion and just invest time and just get your hands dirty and give it a shot and try things out. And it doesn't matter if it's working or not, because most of the time you will learn more from your failures. For example, let's take TYPO3 and you have a new idea and build something. And once you need to update, you see, okay, that won't work out. We can't update that thing. Then you have learned one important thing, okay, it won't work that way. So you won't repeat this failure. And if you do something else and that's just working, you will probably just repeat and don't get the opportunity to improve. So that's also something that's very important, at least in my opinion. Always question what you did last time and how you solved an issue last time, and question, how would I do it this time? Would I repeat it like the last time, or is there something new out there that might be a better solution right now? And especially if you are working with TYPO3 or anything in the IT, there are new versions out with new features, and probably there's a better way now. So just doing the same over and over again, that's what computers are made for and not humans. If I can do it the same way more than once, then I could create a program that's doing the job.
Right, then you automate it.
Yeah, that's what computers are made for. Yeah. And it's also the same with the extensions. I guess if we would create extensions for our customers that solve a generic issue, then of course we would put them on GitHub or somewhere else, because everyone could reuse them for this scope, as you mentioned, which would be very tiny. But most of the times they are just very specific to the customer and some business logic of the customer, which isn't true for someone else. So,
but some people who are very, very involved in TYPO3 and using it for client projects say that at this stage in its development, the TYPO3 core is essentially, quote unquote, feature complete, right? Tell me what you think of this statement. I think that means that for a large number of client projects, the core itself with some configuration is going to get you up very, very, very close to being able to do a full project. And then ideally, all of those generic functionalities that you just mentioned, all of those little things are already going to be there. And if it's not, you probably want to fix it in core. And whatever is left for you to do is then actually the custom specific thing that a client needs, which is hopefully more interesting to do, but also not necessarily useful for hundreds of other projects, right?
Yes, exactly. I've heard this first time from Matthias Schreiber back, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago at TYPO3 Camp Rhein-Ruhr. And I remember that Jochen Weiland was in the room and said, whoa, wait a moment. That means we get no more updates because I was and there's nothing left to do and stuff like that. And Matthias just said, yeah, okay, wait a moment. That means right now we have no feature left we need to implement. That doesn't mean that in 1 or 2 years there are new requiremements or technologies we need to implement. And we can see, okay, we got the new password forgotten feature and fluid emails, new adoption of PSR standards and stuff like that. So, and there will be a version 11 with new features and stuff like that. But exactly as you've mentioned, if there's something generic missing in TYPO3, and I guess there are still things, and I guess some of those things are too complex to just create one patch and ready to go, because there are more conceptual issues. How do you want to solve that? How does it fit into TYPO3, stuff like that? Everything else exactly like you've said.
So you mentioned back in 2012, 2013, you started off writing generic PHP functionality that somebody else had to then go and integrate into TYPO3 installations. I wonder if you can compare TYPO3 4.7-ish to TYPO3 10-ish, because, for example, TYPO3 10 is compliant with the vast majority of the PSR standards.
Well, yeah, that are at least 4 different words, I guess, because I've evolved and TYPO3 evolved. So that's actually 2 words that are compared with their old states. Of course, I don't write the same code as back in 2012, and my knowledge increased, all those kind of things. We can even compare TYPO3 10 to version 9, and I try to work with customers only with the recent LTS, which is version 10, because otherwise I always have to deal with, okay, was this feature already in version 9? How can I write the code so it's easier to migrate once we update to version 10 and stuff like that? The one project I've talked about beforehand, we have started at the beginning of the year when version 10 wasn't out yet. And we've started with version 9, of course. And I've told our customer, okay, let's just switch to version 10 right now, because the breaking stuff is through, and we only have one extension dependency, which was Solar. And we've already talked with them. There's already a branch. Just give it a try, and if it's okay, let's use version 10, because otherwise all the things I'm doing right now, we need to update later on. And I can't use all the new features like I've mentioned, the PSRs, like the events, for example, and stuff like that.
Right.
The new dependency injection, which came with version 10, and all those kind of things. And especially the dependency injection was something I already knew from TYPO3 Flow.
Yes.
And it was just, okay, that's how it should be. I can just write an interface in my code and just say, okay, let's switch the implementation for this project on this scenario. Yeah. And finally, I can write my code and don't need to, okay, let's give me the factory, and now let's create me the query builder. I just can say, okay, I need a query builder. And everything else is just configuration. Yeah. And that's one of the strengths of TYPO3 with TypoScript and stuff like that. You have the generic implementation and a specific configuration, and that's how it should be.
Would you say the conversation with your client about, look, TYPO3 LTS is running and it's got a few more years of support and it's fine, but I would rather jump in when we're at a beta release of version 10 because it's the newest. I'm wondering about the risk of using an early version versus the project will be cheaper and last longer because you're starting on the newest version already. Like risk versus longevity versus stability, kind of. What do they hear when you talk with them about that?
Yeah, the first thing is our customers are other TYPO3 agencies, so you can talk on a different level than with some end user who doesn't even understand or know what you are talking about. Where I guess most agencies just makes a decision and say, we are using the latest, and the customer says, yeah, that sounds okay. And
yes, it's new and shiny.
Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't even, it might depend on the customer, but I guess for most normal customers, I wouldn't even go into such detail and just say, okay, you trust us, we do our job, and if you don't trust us anymore, let's talk about the reasons, and maybe you need another agency, and we are doing the decisions, because that's the reason why he has an agency and doesn't do stuff like that on his own.
I can accept all of that, except I'm wondering about the support cycle, because if I take version 9 now, and I buy the extended long-term support phase at the end without looking at the calendar. Now I've got 3-ish years of support, 2-3 years of support in TYPO3 9, but I've got 6-year window, right? Like a 3 years for free still with TYPO3 10, and then another couple of 3 years in if I buy the paid option. So isn't that still an argument for a quote unquote customer?
Also, Matthias Schreiber was the first one who introduced me into such parts, because I always was employed at companies and never was part of those decisions.
Yeah, but you run a company now. You have to.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm totally in that. It's part when you're selling a website, you also need. We have talked about the constraints and scopes, and that's how long should the website last, and when do we plan the update? Do we need an update? All those kind of things. And Matthias told us that's part of your job as agencies. You are selling a product, and you can't say we built your website and we are done. That's what I also mentioned when I talked about what means if you are being a professional. And I always think you're entering a relationship with the customer. It's not, okay, you buy me once and you get one thing and that's it, and we are over. It's always more healthy for both sides if you know, okay, whenever I have an issue with my website, I know I can call them. And for an agency, it's always nice, okay, we know our customers love us, and we know if they need something, they will contact us and not someone else and stuff like that. And therefore, if you are getting to a new website, you always need to talk, okay, how long should it last? Is it for one fair? Then we don't need to talk about updates and stuff like that. If it's your company website and you plan your company should last more than 6 years, then of course you might think about updates and stuff like that. And then all those things should already be part when planning the project upfront. For sure. Yeah.
What I think I hear underneath that, though, is that you're saying that in the end, it's not the technical details that matter. It's building trust between you and that client, and then you're maybe free to do the right thing for them.
Yeah, yeah. If something is broken in your house, and like me, you can't fix it yourself because you're more the IT guy and not the craftsman, then I also need to trust in what they are doing, because they also use terms I don't understand, use tools I haven't seen before and stuff like that. And I just need to trust that I can live in the same house in 10 years. So
I had a tradesman, a Handwerker in my place last night, and he was telling me about, now to be compliant with the building codes for bathrooms, you have to do this and this with this plastic stuff. And I was, and I'm just realizing, like, actually, when we tell people about stuff, it's just like if the guy would say, well, I have to use a number 7 hammer now, and I'm only allowed to use the number 29 left-handed nails because of, and it'd be like, whoosh, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, whatever you say, it sounds cool. Okay, you know what you're doing. Okay.
Do I get a nice bathroom at the end? Okay. That's a nice analogy, though. I've never thought of it in those terms before. I'm going to remember that one. Definitely. Because it makes perfect sense. What is your favorite feature of TYPO3?
I would say the backend comes packed by TYPO3 itself together with the TCA. So I just need to write some lines of configuration and allow everyone else to put in the content. I guess that's actually one of the biggest features.
I also, in that moment when you've got a backend running in TYPO3, I was incredibly impressed when I learned about it at the time that you can basically plan and design and put content into your site, even though it doesn't have a front end, right? The separation of concerns is a nice design feature. What should everyone know about TYPO3 CMS?
Actually, that it's open source, which already means there are many different things behind it. Like you can always have a view in the code if you don't understand something, why it behaves like it does, stuff like that. It also means that you get it for free, of course, and that you can participate and adjust it to your needs, and that it's open source. It's actually one of the biggest important parts. And I guess not everyone gets what open source actually means. I guess there should be some more marketing.
Do you think that still needs there still needs education around that out in the marketplace?
I think so, because even in TYPO3, when you have Juhasen now, in some camps, he, like in Venlo, he talked about what does it actually mean, free, and they always use free in free speech, not in free beer, stuff like that. So even there, you always need to educate what does open source actually mean. Like you already said, when you open source something, it doesn't mean here's the code, I'm off. Yeah, there's way more.
There's another side to that you can work into your conversations as well. With your customers, I feel you should never tell them, hey, this is free, because then you're setting a really difficult expectation when you turn around and say, oh yeah, and this project is going to cost you 10,000 euros, 100,000 euros, whatever it is, right? Like, and they say, I thought it was free, right? Yeah. And there was a saying floating around for a while, open source is free as in puppy. When you get it, you still have to feed it and take care of it and take it for walks and stuff, right?
That's nice, yeah.
So free as in beer, free as in speech, free as in puppy.
Yeah. That's nice. Didn't hear that before.
I guess it sounds like I could repackage some of my old open source business pitch. Kind of sounds like it's still relevant, which is good for me because I could give that talk pretty much every day. On this podcast, every time I'm trying to do a thing called the Suggest a Guest. Who is it that you think I should talk with on the podcast?
I would recommend my old boss, which is Fernand Kuhl, also located in Mönchengladbach. Mm-hmm. Because he's also a professional and he's just a developer. He is not a web developer or TYPO3 or something like that. He also worked with TYPO3 way before I was introduced. Mm-hmm. He worked with Flow, Neos, which was their own way now, and worked with Python and so many other things. So he's also a Linux guy and involved in so many different things. So I guess if I should name one person who is in parallel and knows a broad range of activities, I would suggest him. Yeah.
Okay, so and talking with him, he's also he's a technical business person, I think.
He's a freelancer, so running his own business for himself. Also more or less a back-end developer, but interested in all kinds of things. So he also knows the front-end stuff, but he is not a designer or something like that.
Okay. It sounds like interesting conversation with him might be to put TYPO3 in the context of all the other things that he knows about and uses as an all-rounder. That's pretty cool. I think there's a really nice confluence of a lot of the things that we've been talking about so far, and that is we could really use more people who know about TYPO3. There are a lot of people in the world who want IT jobs, and it's a great way to help people in the world and move up and provide for your family and so on. Also, what we haven't talked about so much today is I think that TYPO3 is, in 2020, is not as well known as it is good. I think it's a highly professionalized system that's used for really, really successful, big, interesting web projects. And outside of Central Europe, it's not as well known as other stuff. And since I've become actively involved in the community again, which goes back about 4-ish years now, I've touched on it many times over the years, but in the last 3 or 4 years, I really thought it's time to sort of spread the word and tell more people about it. And I had the real privilege to help organize the first TYPO3 book that's been done in 10 years. That's coming out soon. And your name is all over that because you were extremely helpful providing information and quotes and helpful tips and so on. So first of all, thank you for that contribution. And I think it backs up everything that you were saying about wanting to help people. But talk about who contacted you. What were those conversations like? Also the marketing or growth potential for the community around the book.
Yeah, as you've said, I also think that TYPO3 is not as known as it should be, and I don't know how it is nowadays. But when I've started, books were just more important than the internet. So if you want to learn new technology, you went into the bookstore and bought a book, and not sure if that's still valid today, but I guess still many people out there prefer books, may it be an ebook or a printed version, over something someone wrote on the internet or that's promoted in the internet or something like that. And
Right.
I also think that books have a different meaning. Like if you're doing a book, not sure how it's nowadays with Amazon printing and stuff like that. People that I know still think, okay, if you're doing a book, you need someone who thinks that it's a good idea to publish the book and to print the book and stuff like that. So it's different if you do a website, which nowadays everyone can do, or if you create a book and publish that book. And as far as I know, the book already took quite some time to create.
It was a series of learning experiences, yes.
And so I think it's something very different to a blog post or a series or a website for promoting things. And it's way more serious than anything else you can find. Also, I don't know how people read books, but I guess they are in a different mood than when they have a tablet or a laptop or something like that.
Yeah. Maybe
so
it's a
you
little
are
more
focused. Exactly. So and you can work with a book, at least if it's printed, you can marker things and stuff like that. And also ebook, I guess there are software that supports you in doing such things. Yeah. And with websites, there are extensions for browsers, but I guess most people just don't think about editing a website to mark important parts for them and stuff like that. So
it doesn't have the same permanence, does it? Yeah. I mean, it's an older technology, and it's a sort of a proven information density that we understand pretty well as humans. I hadn't thought of all the aspects of what you were saying before. We indeed, a couple of years ago, thought it would be a good idea to do the book, especially setting like a marker saying this project is here and good and you should have a look at it. And the association really wants to use it as a marketing tool. And we can send books to people and we can give away ebooks and so on. And we got to work, and we had, it's a team effort here, and it's a team effort with many community members, including you. So we collected a lot of contributions and we thought about how to go about it. And one of my colleagues and also co-author on the book, Heather McNamee, is a pedagogue, is a trained educator. And so she thought a lot about structure and learning paths. And the concept came together, and we were able to convince A Press, which is a reputable tech publisher, so we actually had to go and say, here's a CMS that you haven't really heard of, but it's got this community and it's got all these sites and it's got all this potential. And we convinced them that they would sell enough books to make it worth their while. Right. And then they have it's quite a refined process, and it's been great working with them. And then they have a couple of smart tricks along the way. They said, obviously, we don't have TYPO3 people in-house here, but it needs to be technically accurate. Who in your community could be technical editors? And then we arranged for Jo Hasenau and Kai Strohbach to be the technical reviewers, but they weren't working for us. They were working for A Press directly, right? And then like asking the tough questions and stuff. It all came together pretty well. If I ever do it again, I know a bunch more now, and I'd organize things a little differently. But yeah, we're really, really hopeful that the result can make a difference. And doing this in partnership with the association, our goal is to get the word out about the project. So like I said, there's a bunch of sort of best practice and examples and stuff, ladies and gentlemen, contributed by this guy on your screen here now, Daniel Siepmann. And so thank you so much for that. That was really, really generous of you. Hopefully we can make a difference too. I have been having a ton of fun. I think you've said some really, really wise, insightful things. I'm really, really grateful that you took the time to talk with me. The most important question of the podcast now is Pils or Kirsch?
In the end, I'm not even a beer person. I don't like the taste of beer.
Okay,
so it would probably be a limo or something like that.
That's a very diplomatic answer. And for those of you who are not in Germany or not in our region of Germany, fun facts about Germany. Cologne is a city of 1 million people. It's the 4th largest city in Germany, and Cologne has its own beer style that nobody makes anywhere else, and by law can only be brewed inside the city of Cologne, and it's called Kölsch. And it is clearly, and this is a completely non-controversial statement, it is clearly the best beer there is. Now,
I've heard others that say Kölsch or is not even beer. But
now, 40 kilometers down the road in Düsseldorf, where the TYPO3 GmbH company is, and all the agencies we were talking about before, they brew a completely unique beer that's only brewed in Düsseldorf called Alt.
Yeah, that's not only in this city. That is in the region.
Yeah, and then as soon as you go north or east outside of Cologne and Düsseldorf, you rapidly hit areas where Pils is really popular. So this is actually a highly divisive conversation. But beer culture in Germany is very, very important. So, right. So I thought it was incredibly diplomatic of you just to say, "Oh, hey, no, I don't do beer." So then it's a nice way to not answer.
Yeah, but if you want a clean answer between Düsseldorf or Cologne, then I would always opt for Cologne, except for the soccer team, then it's always Düsseldorf. And of course not Cologne, because I'm from Mönchengladbach, and soccer and Mönchengladbach and Cologne, that doesn't fit.
Right. Hey, it's been great. It's been great chatting, and I hope we can see each other in person sometime. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thanks again, Daniel.
Thanks for your interest.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks to the TYPO3 Association for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you B13 and Stephanie Kreutzer for our logo. Merci beaucoup Patrick Gaumont, TYPO3 developer and musician extraordinaire, for our theme music. Thanks again to today's guest. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe in the podcast app of your choice and share Application, the TYPO3 community podcast, with your friends and colleagues. If you didn't like it, please share it with your enemies. Would you like to play along and suggest a guest for the podcast? Do you have questions or comments? Reach out to us on Twitter at TYPO3 Podcast. You can find show notes, links, and more information in our posts on typo3.org. Remember, open source software would not be what it is without you. Thank you all for your contributions. Could elide into the soccer rivalry conversation, but see, my diplomatic answer is, I don't actually follow the Bundesliga, so I don't know.
You could even say, okay, we are not in the same Bundesliga, so that would also be okay.
As to FC Cologne, if one were a fan, it's hard work being a Cologne fan.
But I know how it is. But because Mönchengladbach had the same issues back in the past, so...
It's really funny. Caroline Kebekus, who's a brilliant German comedian, she has this routine that when she talks about, and she's from Cologne and she's a Cologne fan. If Cologne ever got better and we're in the Champions League and stuff, she couldn't handle it. That would be too stressful. It would be too much pressure and responsibility if the FC was too good. Wow. And this thing on my hair today. Whee! Hooray! Oh well. I think if we're worrying about our hair in 2020, that's whatever. All right. Thanks. Awesome conversation with Daniel Siepmann. I was so impressed by some of the things he had to say and the real wisdom he had to share around technology and client relationships and just thinking about how to deal with open source. I really, really enjoyed that. So I hope you did too.